Hey, Stacey.
It doesn't let you take off the thing until you agree to recording. I couldn't unmute. I'm probably gonna go off camera because I just woke up and I'm so tired.
I just woke up myself about 15 minutes ago.
How are you?
Not bad. It's good to be home, actually. This is the only 2 week stretch that I'm home, other than holidays and COVID, since May of 2022.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Busy.
I've been
Well, it's good to
traveling
have
that
you
much.
back on the call.
Excuse me?
I said it's good to have you back on the call.
Ah, thanks. Yeah, well, this morning I had a little bit of like 10 minutes to prepare. And I feel a whole lot better about the possible subjects that, we could be touching on. On the other hand, it's a Saturday, so it's pretty wide open. But now I got a bunch of stuff to talk about for tomorrow. Hey, Bear.
Hello.
Howdy.
Hey, look at that. Holy smokes. Barry, Sam, Stacey. Everybody's on time.
Working on it.
Well, like I was mentioning to Stacey, it's actually feels strange to be home for a 2 week stretch. I'm not traveling, this week or last, most every other week I've been in that situation. Anyway, God, it's good to be back. Hey, this is a Saturday, I know, so it's pretty open, but I feel really well prepared actually for our conversation tomorrow. But just mostly just curious what people are thinking about these days.
Thinking about there's not enough to think about.
I'm thinking that.
Yeah, what does that mean, Barry?
Well, it may be a function of my reduced energy levels in my recovery phase, but I'm having a hard time finding something to get into that is within my reasonable range of energy and attention and focus and cognitive powers. And I can't find anything to really get turned on to spend effort on. And maybe that's just me, and maybe that's reality. I don't know.
When's the last time you felt like that?
I don't really remember when I woke up and I go, I have no reason to get out of bed today. Maybe in the 90s. I don't know. But most days until this episode with the recovery, I never really got up and go, what am I going to do today? I've got nothing to do all day today. Or nothing that really turns me on.
Set up a blind date.
Well, I've
Hey,
thought
let's
about
each
that.
set up a blind date for Barry, each of us.
Let me tell you something. One of the things I noticed about having reduced energy levels because your red blood cell count is down, and this is just I can't prove this, but I have the distinct impression my libido is also diminished substantially. And I don't know if that's because my red blood cell count is down or if it's just some other reason, but I have no libido anymore to speak of.
That's because of old age.
Old age. Old age.
Yeah, getting old.
Okay.
If that helps.
Yeah,
Sounds like depression to me.
Well, it could also be, there's plenty to be depressed about. I mean, what's going on in Israel and Ukraine and in the Congress and elsewhere on the planet is, frankly, depressing as hell. Nobody knows how to solve these stupid, gratuitous violence problems among our species all over the friggin' planet, and that's depressing. So it's not a problem that anybody seems to know how to solve, including the world-class experts. So it could be depression, which I've been pretty candid about it, that what's happening is very depressing.
Remember, we don't have a lot of choices. We don't have choice.
We don't have any actions that we can take other than kvetching that has any positive contribution. Everything that everybody does only seems to either running in place or running backwards.
Barry,
Yeah.
I got so many suggestions for you.
Be a role model and exercise a few of them.
I'll save them actually for later because right now I think I'm doing a canvassing of what's on people's minds.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things before I get into things. 9 o'clock, I have a membership meeting with everybody in the guild, so I need to leave about 10 minutes before 9 o'clock today. Tomorrow I have the full 2 hours, but today I only have 50 minutes.
Sam,
Second thing is that it's my birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. And the third thing is that I have something weird happen to me on Wednesday. So anyway, I was introduced to a new supplement called taurine, Taurine, taurine.
No, it's
Yeah.
it's an amino acid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amino acid. Yeah, so I just my wife just put like 1/3 of a teaspoon onto my salad for me. So I tried for the first time on Wednesday. So I finished my salad. I went to the restroom and washed the bowl and handed it back to her. On the way back to her office, I feel the whole visual effect turn around me. It's just going crazy. So I barely walked straight to her office and put the bowl on her table and walk back to my desk, which is, about 10 steps away. So I hold on to the door and close the door and then sit down on my chair. As I look at an object like this one here in front of me. So this is what happened. I have the object in front of me. It shift to the right. It shift like I'm in the boat, that things slice on the boat, like shift to the right, like, just like this. And then it appear again from the middle and then shift again and appear again and shift again. And that lasted about 2 minutes. Scared the hell out of me. It's like, what the hell happened to me in the whole world? And like, I have a nurse in my office. So she said, well, call the advice nurse, call the doctor. Anyway, make long story short, I end up in emergency for 2 hours. They went to neurology check, they went up EKG, check everything that they can check without blood test. Nothing's wrong. If it happen again, come back. Otherwise, you're good to go. So
it could be lightheadedness, but lightheadedness it's not that uncommon, but that's
basically again, let me repeat what I say. Okay. When I sit on my desk, I can really tell what's happening. Is that when I look at the object in front of me,
yeah, that function.
Is it only one object or is it all objects?
Only one object. Oh, I'm sure the whole object. It's the whole thing. I'm just using one object as a focus point because I need to describe precisely what happened to me visually.
And only visually, nothing
Only
else.
visually. I mean, because of the visually, it's sort of like I'm getting, what do I call that? Like you have in the boat effect, what do you call that?
Nausea?
No, yeah. So nausea kicks in when I have that effect. So it's like
there's a lobe in the brain, and I'm trying to remember OCC. I can't remember what it stands for. Something.
Occipital something.
I have to look it up. Anyhow, there's a lobe in the brain whose job it is to orient your body relative to your surroundings so that you know where you are in your surroundings. And if that lobe goes offline even briefly, you're just swimming in, and people have reported episodes where that function, where am I in space, suddenly goes offline and they're floating in the air or whatever. You can lose portions of your occipital imaging processing. Go ahead, Sam.
If they did research, or if you did research, is this a documented side effect of taurine supplement?
no,
I've never heard
nothing
of.
to do with it. It was nothing to do with it but it added the complexity of it because I was introducing a supplement. So the final diagnosis, I'll tell you what she labeled it at after checking with the neurologist. Peripheral vertigo.
Peripheral vertigo. Well, okay, that's a generic term. Yeah, vertigo is a general thing of, like fear of heights, but you have to go to a height. If you're actually climbing stairs to get there, that's going to exacerbate it. It's not like taking an elevator. So you can have vertigo if you take an elevator, but you can also have vertigo if you climb the stairs, because that lowers the amount of blood circulating in your brain, and that diminishes the function of everything, including your visual system, your balance, your visual system, all that kind of goes not completely offline, but diminished.
So if that's vertigo, this is my very first vertigo I ever experienced. According to a couple of people I talked to about vertigo, is that they're consistent, they're persistent, they keep coming back until a while. But I only happened one day, and then the last 2-3 days it doesn't happen again.
If it's unexpected and anomalous, you make a note of it, and then you see if it ever recurs.
Okay.
But you do want to make a note of an unexpected anomalous experience, like the one that I had, where I lost blood and I didn't have any prior experience with anything like that. Turned out to be a serious thing that needed attention. But what I ended up finding out was that, well, I also had high blood pressure and kidney function issues. That's what I really found. And
What was the taurine supposed to be for in the first place?
It's supposed to help your heart stronger, because I've been monitoring my vascular aging, and I lost 5 years of my age from, added 5 years of my age after I have the roast beef sandwich. Much of beef.
yeah, that's baloney.
And that's really
roast
bad.
beef,
And
baloney.
I found out really helps a lot my vascular aging is that walking 10,000 steps a day really helps a lot, big time. So it dropped dramatically like a couple of days ago because I have a 10,000 step day. So that was, yeah. So anyway, so I forget that right now.
If you deplete some resource from overexertion, you're going to have the consequences of depletion.
Yeah. So anyway, so just to share that with you, walk and eat less meat and beef, and especially so.
Yeah,
big
get
difference.
broth. Take some chicken. I bought myself one of those giant cans of chicken broth, partly because I have to increase my liquid intake on account of I'm also taking the iron supplements, and you have to increase your liquid intake or otherwise your stools get really solid.
So I'm using the body scan from Vitrines that's measuring my vascular aging. I'm telling you, to me, it's lifesaver, because I always believe in calibration. I don't believe in supplement. I don't believe in exercise. I believe in calibration. If the data tells me this works, go for it. If it doesn't work, stay away from it.
But you have to repeat the measurements. Don't take just one measurement.
Every day.
Yeah.
Religiously.
Speaking of which, every day, I finally reached the end of the first round of batteries in the blood pressure cuff. But down the basement, I found a power supply that works. So I went and I plugged it in, and I didn't have to replace the batteries. I could go ahead and take my measurement with the thing plugged in today.
I have a free association that I thought I'd share. For about 3 or 4 years now, on the Saturdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, my extended family, and by extended, I mean people in my dad's generation, his siblings, their wives or spouses, and all of their kids. In other words, my cousins, my 24 cousins on that side of the family, and some of the grandkids from those people. So anywhere from, let's say, 12 to 20 people show up every particular Saturday out of a potential 50 or 60 or so. Actually, it's a much higher number. But anyway, we get between 8 and 20 usually on a given Saturday. And what strikes me is the first hour, of course, is the people in the US, and you're typically my cousins and their kids and my parents, whatever. But 1 hour into it becomes early morning wake up time in Taiwan. It's 8 a.m. in Taiwan, at 6 o'clock in the morning. So the siblings of my parents join. And usually at that point, the US people drop out. And you know why? 2 reasons.
I know.
One reason. Yes.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I don't know.
Take a shot.
only because you said it was free association, because they're talking about all of their ailments, like all the things that are wrong.
Bingo. Bingo. You know,
They don't want to hear the
when that
medical.
generation gets together, they're like 75 to 93 now, you know, all that age. Yeah, my parents both hit 91 this year. Sorry, 75 to 91. The person
your
my aunt
parents?
was 93, unfortunately, just passed away a few months ago. But it's strange how when they get together, they're talking about, oh, well, you know, this pain is new and that medication I'm on now, I adjusted it this way, and so just died because of so and so and so. It's about aging and pain and maladies and death. And it's very matter of fact, you know, it's not like, oh, this is so horrible. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but it's always like very factual. And I thought it was just something that just reminded me of this particular segment of our conversations right now.
I'm getting a refresher
remember
course
that.
in biology. I mean, I took biology in what, high school or maybe even in college. I don't remember now. But you know, what you learn in high school biology or one semester of college biology, you don't learn very much. And then when you get to be in your 70s and you start having all these medical issues, you're suddenly getting this refresher course in human biology at a level of detail that you never expected.
It's amazing when it affects you personally, right?
Well, yeah, because now you have a reason. And you know what's hard? It's learning to pronounce the friggin' prescription drugs, tamsulosin and I can't even say it, lisinopril and amlodipine. And I keep practicing how to say, and I can't remember how to pronounce them, even after a month.
Yeah. Just for completeness, there's two other reasons why the juniors drop out. One is the older people start talking in Taiwanese, okay? And those of us that understand Taiwanese hang around, but others don't.
That was going to be my guess, is language issues.
And the third reason being is dinner time. Okay, so they come from 5 to 6, then they go off to go eat. So, but those sessions, surprisingly, it's been going on 3 or 4 hours now. They can go on for 3 hours. Usually I stay for less than an hour, or you know, maybe an hour and a half if I'm interested in something. But man, my dad and his siblings and their spouses, they can go out for 3 hours. Sorry, 2 hours, because they join at 6. It's amazing. It's every week. So I actually thought that was it's number one, pretty cool. Number two, they've actually survived quite a long time now, most of them. And it took months for some of them to get used to Zoom and how to navigate Zoom and how to, you know, use it on a reliable basis and get the audio right. But yeah, I mean, it's been there now, so I just thought I'd, you know, share that little free association thought.
Saturday at 5 p.m. It's a good timing.
Saturday at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
California time.
I'm thinking about setting up something like that. I must have at least 200-300 relatives around the world.
Yeah. Do you have regular reunions, by the way? Because every 4 years we try and get together someplace like Taiwan or Hawaii or Monterey or San Antonio or Atlanta, Georgia, you know. So every 4 years now for over 2 decades, we've been having these little reunions.
Nice. That's a very good one. Yeah. No, what I have is WeChat and WhatsApp and Facebook that's how we keep track of each other's.
Cool.
Virtually.
Back in the 1970s, when I was at Bell Labs, there was a project to go out in the field and take measurements of telephone circuits in a bunch of central offices. And so they had created this gizmo to hook everything up. And it wasn't designed to be a conference bridge, but it could function as a conference bridge. So when I was one of the people who was attending the system, I would stay after the normal hours and I would start calling up the relatives on one side of the family, like 7 or 8 people, and bridge them. Now we're talking about the 1970s. And nobody knew I was going to do this. So I would have a bunch of people on, then I would add one more person because they would give me the phone number. And I did it on one side of the family, and then the next I did the other side of the family. And talk about 3 hours and people talking that hadn't talked on the phone for, you know, years, you know, at the conference of 7, 8, 9, 10 people. That was totally spontaneous, just as opportunity arose, because I had this technology that allowed me to rig up a conference bridge.
Especially a free call.
That was the whole point. It was a free call, and it wasn't just two people. It was, you know, I had my mom's side of the family, my dad's side of the family.
You know how much it would cost if you actually have to charge for it?
That would have been, well, I don't know what it would have been in those days, a few $100s probably.
Easy.
Yeah.
Here, I'll free associate again. I got married in 1991, I think, approximately. Yeah, 1991. Honeymoon was Europe. So we're in this little resort area hotel. I forget what town. It was either Spain or Switzerland or Germany somewhere. And I thought, well, it'd be nice to call to, you know, the office and check in with the office and say hi to people from Europe, you know. So we got to chatting and I had various people come on and we were on for over 20 minutes. And then when I stepped out of the booth, somebody hands me this bill. And I said, what's this? That's the total phone cost. I said, it's got too many digits in it. It's like over $200 for a 20-minute phone call from Europe to the United States way back in 91.
That's right. That's what it was in those days.
It was probably like $230 or $240.
So lucky that you didn't make any international call.
Sorry, what?
You didn't make any international call.
It was an international call.
Okay.
That's what they cost,
Yeah.
Yeah, calling from Europe or calling from overseas in those days was prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
I hope that was the end of your honeymoon.
That's the start of the honeymoon. So all my, you know,
Oh, you must have been
cash,
miserable.
it all dried up in that one phone call. In fact, right when I walked out of the booth, the lady who's monitoring the booth said, yak, 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 yak. That's the first thing she said to me, yak, 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 yak.
I had no idea what it was going to cost.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I have to use credit cards the rest of the way. Anyway, hey, Stacey, I haven't seen you in quite a while. What's been going on with you?
Right now, the main thing that's going on for me has to do with the Mideast and how that impacts everything that I've been involved with forever anyway. It's upsetting to see how the messages are being manipulated to different groups of people and how the crossover between these groups are making the conflicts between people even worse. So it's, you know, the same frustration there. When I listen to Barry's story, I think in two ways. You know, there's a part of me that thinks about the depression aspect, but then there's another part that thinks for some people, the idea of not wanting to go and do is actually a good thing and part of a spiritual process. So I just think that lots of different things are happening all over, and some of them get confused and some of them are being looked at maybe not quite the way they really are. And I'm just working on keeping a balance in my life, you know, and watching my energy and not getting too enmeshed in things that I can't control. The conversation's more difficult though. What bothers me the most, I mean, I've said this before on these calls, that it's hard when you're the person in the middle because you get beat up on both sides. But with the Middle East conflict, it's ramped it up even more. So
Anti-Semitism is spiking.
The anti-Semitism is spiking, and at the same time, some of the reactions are helping to make it spike. I'm watching what happened with Democrats and Republicans and turning into a MAGA thing. I'm watching the same thing happen, but now I'm seeing MAGAs and Jews align, not necessarily with the same motivation. And it's just destroying the peaceful people that weren't MAGAs to begin with. I mean, there's a reason that people became MAGAs. So now you take those people and they infiltrate the other groups. It just creates more hate everywhere you go. So it's really upsetting. It's really, you know, I just recently learned that, and the thing is, you can't have these conversations without getting totally attacked. So I can understand how, like, early on, a lot of Republicans used to feel very upset when they'd be automatically called a racist just because they voted for Trump. I get that. It was unfair. It really was. No matter what we think, that was unfair. But at the same time, just because you support just because you have apprehension about the way this war is happening now, you shouldn't be called an anti-Semite. That's ridiculous. We use words way too loosely, and it winds up sweeping up lots of people that don't belong in that net. And it's a really big problem. And I'm probably forgetting to say more because it's just an overwhelming. Oh, I know what I wanted to say, because this is where the parallels between Trump and in for me. What I just learned is, like, back when Yitzhak Rabin was trying to negotiate peace, Netanyahu was actually chanting death to Rabin. So I don't think a lot of people know that years ago, the kind of mentality that we see Trump creating here was happening there. So I want to be clear that 100% I support Israel. 100% I believe that Israel needs to be protected. But also, I believe that the governments, including the terrorist government of Hamas, doesn't give a crap about the people. And I think there's just so much manipulation there, and the fact that people can't discuss openly and can't find, it's like you have to be all one team or the other. And that's not the way life works. You know, there are people that abuse power. We know that. So why should we think it be different anywhere? There are people that are racist on all sides. There are people that do bad things no matter who they are. So to just think that, oh, that never happens, this group is all good all the time, this group is all bad all the time. The only thing I can say is any person that is saying, kill this person at all costs, maybe I want to question that a little bit. Now I'm done. Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
want to say
Tracy.
something, Josh?
Oh, I'm just saying thank you to Stacey.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, what really disturbs me is one of the really powerful but challenging concepts from the Old Testament is wrapped up in the phrase, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Meaning the practice of vengeance, revenge, retaliation, payback is an unbecoming, contraindicated, but commonplace practice. And what really disturbs me is Netanyahu threw that away. He threw away that teaching, just threw it away. How can Israel, the leadership of Israel, throw away one of the most powerful teachings of the Old Testament?
Yeah, and just to add, to make it clear why I'm so upset, in this one group of like 30,000 supporters of Israel, started out mostly Jews, but totally infiltrated by MAGAs and Christians and whatnot. Anytime somebody like me tries to speak, we just get shot down to the point that the people are leaving. I stay because I always want to hear what's going on. But post after post, people will say, this is a hate group. I'm out of here. and then everybody, throws apples on the way out. And it's exactly what I saw in 2016 elections, really. It's just, it's going to just become an echo chamber of hate.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, well, maybe that's a good thing because they're out of the mainstream of social media. I don't know. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's scary.
Nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Shakespeare.
But the suppression of discussion, the suppression of civil conversation, or the space to be able to like ask questions and verify, like, is this right? Or did this really happen? Or do you think that none of that can exist? And so wherever you get information, it's almost always coming from a biased source, regardless of what that bias is, it's always coming from a biased source, which is, everything that I always work against. So it's, really frustrating.
The fifth horseman of the apocalypse, disinformation.
That's what we need to be united against.
Right. And that's an uphill battle that we're losing.
I think that's also what really upsets me because, again, with the people that I know, some people that are connected here, the people with the most understanding of technology are probably in the greatest position to help with the disinformation. And if they can't be united and rein in their own extremists, we're screwed.
We're screwed. If you have editorial control, as say newspapers and magazines do, then you're liable for content. And they passed a law, I think it's back in maybe the 90s, Joshua would know, that if you're a common carrier, meaning that you can carry traffic, but you do not regulate the traffic, you not editorialize traffic, then you're not liable for what's said. So the telephone companies are not liable for what people say over the telephone. They're a common carrier. And the internet companies wanted to be common carriers. Facebook didn't want to be an editorial supervisor of content because that makes them liable if they screw up.
That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, I've been thinking about this, and I asked ChatGPT about why the majority of the citizens stuck in the kindergarten level education. Is it because of the rulers, those in control, did a great job keeping them dumb?
Yeah, that was an objective. Reagan made that express objective. Unfund the University of California. Because he don't want smart people. He don't want educated, critical thinkers because they'd vote against him.
I'm going to say it goes before that. I'm going to say it starts with childhood when we don't allow kids to question. So even in school in the early days, if you ask a question and the rest of the people, or even kids, forget about authority, children, if a group of kids are together, somebody asks a question and the group doesn't want to go in that direction, they mock that person for that question. Socially, we mock people for coming up with an idea that hasn't been come up before, that's outside the box. So unless you have a second person that's there to say, no, well, let's listen to this person out, it tends to be that the rest of the group, in a sense, bullies any free thinker. There's something in my mind, because I have been thinking about this, that has to do with this, with the fear, and then the understanding that there's strength in numbers, and then there's wanting to keep everything cohesive, and free thought and questioning is a threat to that. In my opinion, that's what I think that happens. I can't blame some overlord for that, because that's something that we need to control in our relations.
Thanks, Stacey. I labeled that as we need to look good and being right all the time.
Most important thing in science is being able to recognize when you got it wrong and fix it. That's the most important thing in science, is find the bloody misconceptions, expose them, and fix them.
Again, the root cause is still education. If you are smart enough to know that, then you will allow it. If you don't know, you're dumb enough, then you operate the dummy. I need to win all the time. I need to look good all the time. Otherwise, I'll kill you.
Almost the only thing that I'll react to on social networks is to try to overthrow misconceptions, popular misconceptions, sort of parroting a misconception that's baloney. Axioms that have been overthrown, and half the time it's well received, and half the time it's not well received.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question about that, because I admire the resolve to overthrow misconceptions. I also, even starting 30 years ago, really didn't like it when my kids were exposed to Disney stories and Disney movies. I hated it.
Fairy tales.
I looked at what was being sold, quote unquote, in Disney stories. It was almost never a good depiction of a parent.
Oh, the evil stepmother.
Exactly. I look at what's happening on Nickelodeon, 20, 30 years ago, or at least when my kids were watching it. All the parents are bumbling fools. And they're mocked constantly. So I think the media plays to these seductions. And we, quote unquote, the population, succumb to it. That's what passes as culture. And I really, really hate what's going on. And that Disney is just one case. There's obviously many, many other cases. But for years, in fact, I don't think I've ever taken my kids to Disneyland, for example.
That's because you wanted to save money. Stop lying.
It's very expensive.
Well, that's another reason. You pay $120 and get to do 3 rides.
We know you.
Exactly. But it's also because of these depictions of adults and these horror stories that
but you know what,
like to
Sam?
support.
But the fact that that's the draw shows that they're reaching an emotional need, because the whole idea of the stepmother or something like that, and that would appeal to people.
Wait.
I'm not talking about the dumb ones.
If we're allowing that, why do we not allow porn?
No, that's not what I'm saying. And I'm not talking about.
There's an emotional need there too,
No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's saying something about society, that people feel helpless, that they're drawn to having an enemy that they feel they're being suppressed by. That's the point I'm trying to say. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm saying that the fact that moves people should tell us something. The fact that Trump was able to get so many people to follow him says something about where they were and how he was able to exploit it. That's what I'm saying.
Remember Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit? I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. And the bad character, the villain in Roger Rabbit, was the mayor of Toonville. The people who were making the cartoons, that was the bad guy.
I never saw.
Wait a minute.
Oh, you never saw Roger Rabbit? Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yes. I do recall the movie. But in the 40s and 50s and 60s, even when television was relatively new, you had shows that tried to depict good living, good thought, whatever, even though it was stereotypical.
Father Knows Best.
Stereotypical.
Leave It to Beaver.
I love that.
Exactly.
I'm for that.
Howdy
It's a
doody.
long gone stage, right?
Oh yeah.
So now it's been replaced by all of these, oh, well, this is what I need for emotional recognition and acknowledgement, and all of this
No, that's not what
bad
I'm saying.
depiction of parents and adults and maladies and etc. Okay, so if I'm misrepresenting what you're saying, please correct me, because I do think that there's a little bit of that in there for me.
Yeah, no.
And what I
As a
hear.
matter of fact, I remember having this conversation brought up when I was in either junior high or high school. I really felt that TV should be the role modeling kind of TV. So what you're talking about, the 40s, you know, the 50s, 60s, I like that. I even like the Black Laws. I think it was called Black Laws, right, Barry, in the movies where at the end of the movie, the bad guy always died.
I didn't know it had a name, but yeah.
It had a name, but I'm all for that because that teaches a lesson. No,
But in
you
real
misun-
life, the black guys often become the emperor. Nero was the, you know that the name of the number of the beast, 666, that's supposed to be the gematria, the numerical value of the name Caesar Nero. There's a thing in the Semitic languages where you take the letters of a name and you can add them up because they also have numerical values. And so every name actually has a number. And 666 was the name of the number of the beast. And turns out who's that represent? The one that the scholars think it is Caesar Nero. His name adds up to 666.
reminds me of a video somebody sent me on synchronicity. That was really interesting and all those coincidences. Sam?
So I'm still misinterpreting what you're saying, because if you're saying that the media back decades ago was representing good living and it's now not, that's in alignment with what I was saying about Disney.
Yeah, I
about
wasn't
not
disagreeing.
representing.
I wasn't disagreeing with what you were saying. I was, well, where they are now, I totally agree with you. I have total distaste for everything that's going on there. What I was trying to pull back to is initially with Disney, with like the basic Disney stories, let's say Cinderella. I was saying that there's also, not disagreeing, but also something to be said that was even the way those fairy tales were written in the first place.
I can understand some of them, but to me, it's all of them. Name me a good parent in one of the Disney movies. Where's there a good
But
parent?
that's my point. But they're written for children. So, you know, again,
But wait,
when
wait,
Barry
wait.
dramatizes his stuff to work at, he therapizes himself. To me, fairy tales were written to help, like in a way, therapize children. That's the way I look at it. I could be wrong.
The one exception I might be able to think of is Geppetto.
Yeah, except that he's actually the puppet maker. He's not the
Exactly. He's
biological
not a
father.
parent. He's not a parent.
Yeah, he's the maker. So, and Geppetto, yeah, that's a very, and by the way, that story, at least the way it's portrayed in the cartoon, is the same as, there's a biblical story that has the same ending. Which one am I thinking of? The biblical character who gets eaten by a whale. I'm Ryan.
Jonah.
Who is it?
Jonah?
Jonah.
Yeah.
The Pinocchio story has the same ending as the Jonah story in the Bible. Have you ever actually watched the movie? He gets eaten by a whale.
Yes, I have.
I mean, the connection between the actual storyline and the Jonah story is remarkable. I mean, that really knocked my socks off when I actually watched the Pinocchio cartoon, and I go, he gets swallowed by a whale, and then the whale spits him up. I mean, it's the bloody Jonah story. And by the way, that is a really hard metaphor because the depression, sort of the falling below the surface, that, you know, that eaten by a whale is a classical metaphor, you know, historical metaphor for depression.
I
Falling
look
off
at
the
it from
table.
a different perspective, if I may. So, as you know, Disney almost went bankrupt, and surviving is, you know, it's all market driven. What is accepted by the market, what's needed by the market, and all that stuff. So it's all market driven thing. So at the same time, you need to bring it, simplify it, to keep it conclusion. All generalizations alike, including this one. All that thing, they have to generalize it, they have to pack it up nice and clean, shiny, and people love it, and that kind of story. So that's from the
But
marketing
the way they make it up, these metaphors and allegories and parables, it's actually remarkably ingenious. A lot of these allegories and parables and fables as metaphors for very abstract psychological issues. It's astonishingly deep, but you've got to take a PhD in psychology to figure out how to parse these stories. They're that deep. And the Greek theater, the Oedipus story, and all the Electra story, these are very, very subtle, deep psychological issues that are dramatized by these classical stories that were written 2,000-3,000 years ago.
Yeah, I have a privilege to work with the directors, movie directors. I was surprised to take them 5 to 10 years, sometimes 20 years to pack everything in, and
Right.
like, wow, I have no idea.
But when you're a child and you watch these, you don't have the sophistication to work out these metaphors. You take them superficially, you know, at face value. You don't know how to map them into the abstract psychology or philosophy or whatever you're supposed to map them into.
I mean, you don't have the experience. There's no way, no chance. I mean, you got not enough life experience as a child to map it all out. So you take it as it is and you just swallow it.
I mean, even Harry Potter, the amount of metaphors in Harry Potter is pretty mind-boggling.
I think you're giving kids a lot less credit. I mean,
well, I certainly didn't. I certainly couldn't understand fairy tales and that children's literature until I was much older.
But even now, but again, but even now, sometimes you have that. I mean, you've said it yourself that you have that difficulty with so, and yet, like, I think about somebody like me, I don't have that difficulty, and I don't think I had it when I was a kid. And that's what I'm saying. I think there are certain differences that we're born with. So I think that right now there's a lot of generalizing, and maybe it's true, most kids, and that's where we need the influence of the grown-ups around us to take what we're watching and discuss it with us, to help us maybe see things that we didn't see or question things that we haven't thought of. But it's that questioning process that's important.
I mean, my parents would use these metaphors that you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. I say, I don't want to catch any flies. I don't get it. Right? They would use these expressions that were not to be taken literally, metaphorically, and I never decoded the bloody metaphors.
I only vaguely remember, so Sam's first movie was Pinocchio, mine was Jungle Book, which are both Disney movies. And I don't know, I'd have to look up what year it was to know how young I was, but I was pretty young. I only vaguely remember being really, really, really sad at that movie. And I remember my mother couldn't understand, why was I so sad? But obviously I was sad because he had no parents. He had no family. I mean, is that not obvious of why I was sad? And I just remember her saying, but look, he found somebody. But, little people have big person, like they are still people. I don't know how, I don't have the right words to say.
They have emotions, but the emotions do not have names and explanations.
Right, but that doesn't take away from, there's very many different levels of how sophisticated their thinking is, or not
If I-
sophisticated, but
If I say the word chagrin, an adult knows what this word means. If I say
Some.
chagrin to a 6-year-old, he isn't. This is, oh, it's a nonsense word. What does that have any meaning?
and what I would say to you is using that word in a sentence, you will find adults that don't know what it means, but will be able to use the context clues to figure it out. And there will also be children that could use the context clues to figure it out. That's what I'm trying to say. I promise you, there are adults that don't know what that word means.
Well, or they don't know how to understand what I'm trying to say. And because first, for one thing, at least until after the 1980s, maybe, I hardly ever used words that named emotions. When you're doing science, you're not using the vocabulary that you use if you're writing fiction. With character-driven fiction, you use words that name the affective state of the characters. If you're doing science, you don't use those vocabulary words. They don't belong.
Your chagrin.
I was chagrined. The first time I used the word
I don't
chagrin-
even know that word. I just tried to use it. Did I work? Did I
Oh,
do
you
it
don't,
right?
you don't know
You
the
did.
word chagrin?
It's not it. I've heard of it. It's not in my vocabulary, and I couldn't define it. If I said
Oh.
to someone what the definition of the dictionary, it's
It's-
probably wrong.
It's a blend of sadness and embarrassment.
Ah,
So if you're somewhat sad, but also somewhat embarrassed, then chagrin is, I was chagrined that I didn't make the cut.
Yeah, I didn't know embarrassment was part of it.
Yeah, if you look it
I
up,
didn't
it's
know either.
Yeah. So, and it's not people don't use that word very often. It's not a commonly used word. The average adult probably hardly ever would say the word chagrin.
They may never feel this way ever. So
Well, they may very well have felt sad and embarrassed. If you do something stupid and that causes you to fail at some activity, it'll fall short. Chagrin is a perfectly valid explanation of your state.
I've used that word in writing. I use a lot more words when I write than when I speak, but when I've used it in writing, I've used it to indicate disappointment more so than embarrassment. I don't think I've ever thought of the embarrassment piece as being a part of it.
Yeah. So it happens to be one of my favorite words to name affective states, mainly because it says a lot with one word.
So when's the last time you have felt a chagrin? I mean, I couldn't. I'm going back, many years. I couldn't find an experience that I feel sad and embarrassed at the same
I'll
time.
tell you the first time I actually used it in public. I was at in the telephone business there, the United Nations actually has a technical group where people from different countries get together to figure out how to make a telephone network work internationally. It's called the CCITT, the International Consultative Committee on Telephony and Telegraphy. It's part of the United Nations. So I was I was among the American delegates to one of these meetings one year in Geneva. And one of the issues was they meet every year, but they only meet for like a week or two. And you have too much stuff to cover in a week. It's hard to do it. So one of the discussions was, how can we continue to do our work when we only meet face to face in Geneva once a year? And one of the ideas that came up was teleconferencing, because teleconferencing was becoming a new available technology. And this is, after all, we're all in the telephone business. And the guy sitting next to me, who was my compatriot from Bell Laboratories, asserted that telephony wasn't mature enough to be able to be usable. He basically was deprecating, and he was the special rapporteur, the special reporter on teleconferencing. And he says, we're not there yet. But he had said that in reaction to what I had said about using it. So then the chair of it turned back to me to get my reaction. And I said, I was chagrined to hear that the special rapporteur for teleconferencing says that teleconferencing isn't any good. And everybody laughed. But I basically embarrassed my, my delegation by saying that. I was chagrined. And people laughed at me using the word chagrin because it was a genuine, like, what? You're deprecating the thing that you're here to promote, that you're the expert on, and you're saying it's no good, no damn good.
I mean, he see the difficulty of implementing internationally. You see it as possible because you have tested it with your relatives.
Well, first of all, I didn't believe that it was that dysfunctional, or but it just astonished me that my compatriot, whose expertise was in teleconferencing, was deprecating it as a usable technology for people whose business is telephony.
Did you ever have a deep conversation of why he say what he say?
All I know is that the head of the delegation was really angry at me for having said that.
Of course.
And when I disclosed this episode to my psychologist some months later, and he was sort of coaching me on how to be diplomatic.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually recite to him the detail I wrote. And he says, you have to use very diplomatic words, like you could use, for example, the word chagrin. I said, that's exactly the word I did use. So the guidance from my psychologist was to do exactly what I'd already done, use that exact word. And of course it backfired. And that's meta chagrin. It's when you do the thing which your subject matter expert tells you is diplomatically optimal and it backfires. That's another example of chagrin, meta chagrin.
So that means it's not diplomatic enough.
It's basically, I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have shrugged.
Yeah.
If he turned back to me and I go, instead of saying I'm chagrin, but I didn't shrug, I said I'm chagrined to hear the special rapporteur for teleconferencing say that teleconferencing is unusable, or whatever. I can't remember the exact word he used.
I'm thinking about how would I say it differently if I'm in your position. I would say something like, I'm sure he's right in some respect. At the same time, I see some other respect. So we need to work hard on this subject matters.
Yeah, but that's not what I said. I was just chagrined to hear deprecated. That's all.
I'll give it
Go
a
ahead.
try.
Say again?
I'll give it a try.
Okay.
I would say the special rapporteur is such a visionary about the possibilities of telecommuting that to implement 100% of that will take quite a while. We might start with a very small step just with our basic telephony today. But I think he's got this fantastic vision, which he knows will take decades to achieve.
Yeah, Raumic, ratio of words uttered in. I use one word instead of this whole, flowery speech that doesn't say anything. And that's my downside. I want to use as few words. You got to go.
Later, Sam. I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
you being
Birthday,
here for the first
Sam.
hour.
And next meeting, 2
Bye,
hours
Sam.
meeting. Bye. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Thank you.
I want to find the
And Sam
minimum.
Han, that was wonderful, by the way. That was very good. I like
Thanks,
that was
Stacey.
good.
But so, one of my mistakes is I want to be succinct, and I want to find the one word that says it all in one word. And
Diplomats typically are not succinct, Mary.
Say again?
Diplomats are not succinct.
That's the whole point, is diplomats use a lot of words and say nothing. They have a lot of words that are very vague.
To you, they say nothing.
Well, they say a lot of words, and at the end of the day, they haven't answered any questions on your mind that you're looking for the
On
answer.
your mind.
Yeah. Well, for me, information resolves an uncertainty up here. So if they say 75 words that resolves no uncertainty up here, then that's not information. That's the definition of information, resolves
The
uncertainty.
things that they're addressing with their words are not matters of import to you.
They're just hot air.
Because they don't matter to you.
Well, what matters to me is resolving a decision vector, a decision point. Like what are the facts and what are the opportunities to proceed? And the answer is, we're not going to tell you.
So Barry, have you ever done business in Japan?
I've never been to Japan.
Point made. May I make this point before
probably
you
wouldn't.
talk, Josh?
Yes.
My point is, in Japan, people won't work with you until they know you. So the way they get to know you is to get you drunk. That's one way. Another way is to feed with you for like 3 hours.
3 cups of tea.
No. Like, big banquet, 3 hours, lots of food, and just they want to know how you do casual conversation. What's in that mind of yours, okay? And that's important in business for Japan. Now, I'm not saying they're the only company that does that, but they do take it to kind of an extreme.
Yeah.
So if the relationship is not established, the decision vector is not relevant.
It's not timely. It's not timely.
They're
But see,
not ready
here you
for
are
it.
in
They're
this
not ready
meeting
for
where
it.
you got to make
They
decisions.
don't even know if
and
they want to work with you until they spend, time with you.
Right. And that's why I ended up not having a career at Bell Laboratories
But
after.
Barry, wait. Do you get the point that I'm making? That in the relationship building, it's not leading to a decision vector, unless the decision vector is I will work with this person or I will not, right? That's one way, right? But it's not the resolution of a technical issue at that point. So could you possibly understand that point that I'm trying to make?
I can understand that people want to delay.
It's
And
not a delay. It's not a delay, Barry.
It isn't?
It's an assessment of whether they want to risk doing business with you.
Well, if they don't want to do business with me, I'll do it by myself without their help.
That's a completely fine answer, and they'll help you come to that conclusion. But
Yeah.
they will make their own assessment as well.
I mean, if you look at the papers I've written, most of them are single author. I have written
Barry,
multi-author
I don't get
papers,
the
but
sense
most of
that
them aren't.
I don't get the sense that you're hearing me.
Probably. Well, because you're using too many words and not enough resolving.
No. I'm using a small number of words to indicate an idea which I don't believe you're entertaining.
I don't entertain other people's ideas. Their ideas entertain me.
No, that's mealy mouthed, sleight of mouth.
No, it's chiasmus.
Yeah,
It's a joke.
exactly.
It's chiasmus.
Right. So that's being too flip, Barry.
Yeah, it's chiasmus.
The point is, you're not appreciating those words because you've already dismissed them.
Well, if somebody's not ready to collaborate, then they're not ready to collaborate. So I'm not going to collaborate.
According to them, you are also not ready to collaborate with them. If you're not willing to get to know them and allow the time for them to get to know you.
Yeah.
So
and I want to get to the answer.
Don't misinterpret their willingness and their openness, because they're indicating their openness to work with you is to have a nice meal with you, is to spend time with you before they conduct business.
And the answer is they never end up conducting any business.
No, that is not true at all. There's a lot of business going on in Japan.
Well, you've been out with me.
Exactly. Now, maybe there's some aspect of this conversation that may have a insight into that. But
all I know is that when
recognizing it.
When I was at Bell Labs,
Barry, you really quickly take a different turn in a conversation, and I don't get the sense that you've acknowledged a point that was just made.
There was no point. It was just verbiage.
Bingo.
Verbiage.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Stacey, did I possibly make a point that would be worth considering?
So I'm going to say that, yes, you did. However, I'm going to add that you also did what you're accusing Barry of doing, which is you shut off the possibility that what he was describing actually does happen sometimes, because both of those things do happen. Sometimes people do say a whole bunch of nothing disguised in big words, and they're really saying nothing. That actually does happen.
My point is that what I was doing?
I don't think that's what you were doing, but because you didn't acknowledge, because Barry does have a hard time hearing your point, and that has something to do with Barry. That's true. But you could have said it in a way to make him less resistant to hearing what you were saying. Because Barry, the truth is sometimes people do say too many words, and that's true. But sometimes it's not that they're saying too many words. It's that they're making a point that you don't understand, and you just assume that they're saying nothing, and that's not the case. And that's what I think Sam was trying to say.
Right.
You ever watch Two
And
Animals
Josh
Seven?
has been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I was just gonna put bookmarks around the uncertainty. So there's this phrase FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so the word fear is, we all know what that is. You're afraid what's gonna happen. But the doubt part is, I think I heard Barry say, I doubt that they're going to get to the point. They might get to the point, but after I've heard so many words, I don't want to wait for the point because it's not coming. So there's a doubt factor of it that builds trust that you're talking about, Sam, is it takes the time to learn how people discern in their conversational technology to get to that point. So there's the uncertainty, the doubt, and the fear. So I just wanted to add that to uncertainty.
Thank you. 2 points. Stacey, I'm very open to hearing how I could have said things more concisely while still acknowledging Barry's point, but I'll leave that till later. The second point is I want to tell another story. So this might sound like another non sequitur. Way back when I was way younger, and I was just freshly promoted to a department manager position at TRW. They did send me, the company did, on a week-long management training course. And actually, I find that rare, unfortunately, these days, that they actually did that. One of the stories that was told to me, and I don't remember the particulars, was there was an international conflict. And this was a very difficult political situation. It was between Korea and the United States. I forget exactly when. So the United States sent a contingent to Korea, and they holed up in some hotel that was, hundreds of dollars a night or some fancy place. It may not have been Korea because both contingents went to this place, so they both had to get accommodations. The Koreans rented an apartment for months. The U.S. sent the delegation thinking that they would be done in days. There's a very different understanding of how you actually communicate and what it would take to overcome issues. Now, yes, that is politics. It's not science, okay? But there are matters of import where you do have to listen and you do have to sort of reach a chord very slowly. And the U.S. didn't appreciate that until weeks into the engagement. Anyway, I just want to tell that story also. Over.
So it sounds like what struck you most about Barry's story had more to do with the players than the actual situation.
The players and the culture, yes.
Yeah, okay. Now I understand that better. Where I think Barry's story really had little to do with the players. I think he could have used an example from Facebook or from anything, and then maybe there would have been a better connection. I don't know, Josh.
The real example is the one I was going to give, which is that if the people of an AT&T had a real problem that they really wanted solved, they give it to me and to nobody else. And they wouldn't give it to a Tiger team, of which I was a member. They would simply say, we want this solved as efficiently as possible. Therefore, give it to Barry and to nobody else. And I had the reputation that I would basically zero in on it and do a scientific analysis and recommend a solution that was going to work in minimum time. And there wasn't any conversation. I knew that. I knew that there was a reason why they would assign these problems to me and not to Tiger teams. They wanted an answer.
So you found a good position.
Conversation.
You found a good role.
Well, here's the funny part. One of the most important examples where I worked out the solution mathematically, it took, I think, about 7-8 months to work out the solution and to publish it and present it to the people who gave me the problem. Then it took 2 years for them to ratify it and adopt it. And the reason it took so long is the holdout was the one who was going to lose their job because the solution would make their job irrelevant. They were the one that was mopping up the spill, and I was going to get rid of the leak. I went after, why is there a spill that you're mopping up? You don't need a better mop. You need to stop the leak. Here's how you stop the leak. And the person who was doing the mopping suddenly was the resistor to the solution. Took 2 years. Everybody else managed to find a new job except this one lowly person couldn't find another job. Dragged their heels, couldn't get consensus. And that was the unexpected insight of that experience. Why can I solve a problem in 1/3 of the time that it takes to get agreement to adopt it? Because people who are wasting their time mopping up leaks don't want to lose their job mopping up leaks. They don't want the leak fixed, even though they asked me to solve this problem. That was a huge insight. And I look at politics and I see this is the problem with politics. The solutions are there are solutions on paper that are just fine. You can't get consensus to adopt them. Sam?
I find that position usually is accompanied by a misalignment of the evaluation criteria or the values, you might say.
Yeah.
So if somebody values, XYZ, and XYZ has not been accommodated in the mathematical model, their due diligence requires them asking that question, right? So working in isolation is one way to, in fact, minimize the exposure to other people's evaluation criteria. If you assume that you know what everyone's evaluation criteria are and how they would weight the functions and coefficients, then you can be 100% right all the time. The difference is when dealing with people, we don't necessarily understand what they value.
I had to find out by observing that one person was dragging their heels. And why is this person dragging their heels? I had to figure that one out. But I had to wait until they dragged their heels for so damn long that it was obvious they were dragging their heels. And then I figured it out. But this is why, if you give somebody a mathematical problem and you can work out the math, you're done. For me, I'm done. Except that now I got to explain to people why the mathematical solution is worth adopting. And that runs into politics. Because people don't want the problem solved. They want to keep their job. Turns out.
Can you fault them?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated thing. Why was this one person who was dragging their heels the low person on the totem pole? They were the one that was mopping up the spill. So they were the main point of contact because there's the one whose grief was going to be alleviated. But the problem was that's all she knew how to do. And she didn't have enough competence to find another job in the meantime. Everybody else was able to move on to another role in the company, except this one person nobody would hire her to do something else. I didn't know that was going to be the case until it was the case was that she was the last person left who basically was suffering from this problem. How was I going to know that? Took 2 years to figure that out, to get the data. That wasn't given part. That was not given as part of the data.
Do you accept perhaps that some people would have seen that right away?
Well, the people at AT&T who had assigned her that role probably knew that's why they assigned her that role, because that's all she could do. But I didn't know that. And they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't tell me that. Joshua
Didn't quite answer the question.
Well, there were people who knew it. So go ahead, Joshua.
Oh, I was just going back to what Sam was saying about how they do business in Japan. Is the idea is if you spend enough time with someone, you get to know them, then you find out that that's the only job they can do. And they might, when they're drinking, say, you know what? this is the only job I know how to do. And then they just pour out their soul to you. And then you get that knowledge before you work with someone to know that's the only job they know how to do. And they're afraid to try to learn something else.
I mean, this person could have shared that with me, but she didn't. I had to read between the lines, and
I'm only suggesting that some people could have read that line fairly quickly.
Yeah, but not the person they gave the problem to solve to. They gave the problem to solve to because they wanted the technical solution. They gave it to the person who could do the technical solution, not solve the people problem.
Right. So were I the person who assigned you that problem, I would have put people around you who could work the people issues.
Well, there were people around me, there were my managers, but they didn't see it either. Nobody said, "Psst, Barry, here's why you can't get consensus." Nobody said that.
Well,
Even
pointing out, I was just saying that's why most companies have a division called HR, which is human resources.
Yeah.
For that particular reason.
Yeah. But remember, this is AT&T headquarters assigned this problem to Bell Laboratories, and it came down to my desk. So I'm not even in the same company. I'm in the R&D problem solving group, the elite at Bell Laboratories. And here's a person who's trying to run, a telephone business where you've got bad service that they're just cleaning up bad service.
That's my point, is it's not your job to know the human resources aspect.
No. And in a different company, the parent company. But it was, it was a learning experience. But the easy part was to solve the problem. The hard part was to figure out why they wouldn't adopt it. And then I look at, you zoom out and you look at all the unsolved problems that plague humankind for 5,000 years, all of which have solutions on paper, perfectly good solutions on paper. But Netanyahu won't adopt the one that's been on paper for 3,500 years. You go, what the hell? The solution was written down by sages ages ago. Confucius wrote it down, dig 2 graves. This is not a new observation. Netanyahu basically ignores what the sages say, and he, revenge, vengeance, retaliation, gratuitous violence, disproportionate violence. What the hell? Mathematically, that's idiotic. That's unsound, unwise, unbecoming, contraindicated. The hell? But the voters in Palestine voted for Hamas. The voters in Israel voted for Netanyahu's party. They voted for these assholes. Okay, now what do? You voted for assholes.
Just like we voted for Trump a few years ago.
Exactly.
Arguably.
You look at that and you go, okay, the bare majority somehow managed to put a psychopath into the position of high power. Now, what the fuck do? You lampoon it. That's what you do. And I'm spending my days lampooning it, which is what the fairy tales did, by the way. The nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes were lampooning public figures, and
their political commentary.
Right. And the thing is, because the children on the street are reciting these nursery rhymes, who are you going to arrest? You can't arrest the children. And you can't find any one adult who taught these nursery rhymes to the children. But, I was an adult before I figured out the nursery rhymes were political diatribes against, real people in power.
What I'm hearing in this conversation is it takes multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Not just the majority perspective.
Not only the technical perspective.
Who would have said that the solution to the problem is parody and satire? I mean, I knew about parody and satire when I was 4 years old, but I didn't adopt it until the 1990s.
Is it a solution?
It's the best practice that potentially over the long term, it's, for me, it was therapy. Stacey knows this. I was writing satires and parodies because that was my therapy. Did it change anything? Well, it just bought time. The answer is there is no effective solution that anybody has found that can be implemented and made to work, because you're up against the sociopaths, the psychopaths, the narcissists, the Machiavellians, the sadists, the Avengers. You're up against that demographic, and nothing moves them except old age.
I think the first thing is to turn down the volume. I tried to say this last week a little bit, just in terms of just turn everything down a notch. Whether it's your own energy, whatever it is, just a little notch, not to change anything, but just so that you can be aware of the things that rise above the level that you've set.
One mouth, two ears.
Yes.
I mean, I know that when I write stuff on my blog that I have a very, very small audience, tiny audience. And it's not even indexed in the search engines anymore. It used to be 20 years
and
ago.
that's another thing. Because, okay, so he said one mouth, two ears, but most people are trying to push out information instead of letting information come in. So changing that also.
So you try to make it entertaining. And there are people who are very gifted at making entertaining material, and they write fairy tales. They write Disney movies, they write Netflix movies. People can take a thing and blow it up into some big entertaining drama, which I don't have that talent. I mean, I can write a song parody. I can't even sing it myself. Nobody's going to record it.
I think you're missing the part that I'm saying that comes before you do the writing, which is the more listening from all the different directions before you have the output.
That's the material that goes into the writing of the song parody. All that listening gets boiled into a satire. The satire is the last thing that's produced, and then I'm done.
I'm hearing signals and noise, and when you have noise, it's hard to turn that noise into a signal.
Yeah,
it takes everyone to help each other to make sure that they're heard.
Yeah,
like the one thing that I just will always remember from my whole life was riding on a 4-wheel motorcycle. I have 2 people on the back, so I'm on a 4-wheel ATV, Barry.
This is a sidecar.
I'm driving it.
This is a sidecar?
No, it's a
4-wheel motorcycle?
Yeah, it's called an ATV.
Oh, it's an ATV.
It's not. I'm just an ATV. I'm just using another word. Yeah.
The Jeep.
So it's an ATV, all-terrain vehicle with 4 wheels.
Yeah. Okay.
And it has a clutch like a motorcycle, and so you have to down gear it. So I'm going up a hill, and it got to the point where the weight was too much with 2 people in the back, so I had to put it into a lower gear, and it's still not going up the hill, so I put it into even lower gear, and I hear a tiny signal of a voice of the guy in the back going, my foot, my foot.
My
and his
God.
foot is in the wheel, and I'm riding on his foot, but instead of saying it loudly, my foot, stop, he just says very softly, my foot, my foot. And I'll never forget that moment, because I wish that signal could have gotten to me a little louder before I had down geared it into to get more torque. So I'm torquing his foot in the wheel.
He had his foot stuck in the spokes?
In the wheel.
That had to be in the spokes.
I didn't need to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, I did the same thing. We were in a a little four-seater single-engine airplane, and the pilot was landing in the fog. And I looked out the side windows and I said in a very soft voice, "No flaps."
Yeah.
Because he had forgot, he had neglected to lower the flaps. And I very carefully chose the loudness of saying "no flaps."
Yeah. So what I'm saying is those signals and how they're portrayed, and what I heard Stacey saying is even children have very loud things to say, but the volume to be able to hear these signals of the different people in the room, the wisest person could have said the most important thing, but they said it very low.
Yeah.
And everyone just kept going with the conversation.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's hard to get all the signals.
It's tricky how to formulate a message so it actually gets through the noise. I don't think I've mastered it.
Yeah, I think for me, what really helped me to understand the way the world works is to work with music, just the audio file. And when you're listening to a piece of music, can you separate it into each individual sound?
I
And
can't.
that skill, it's so hard. I know
I
it's
don't have
really difficult.
Yeah.
But once you practice it, it starts to just become natural. You can just tune into each sound, and it's a really fun skill to have. I'm still practicing it, but it's, you hear, especially when two signals, or if you're working on a piano and you're hitting multiple notes, sometimes there can be an overtone, another note that's created that's not even, they call it the ghost note.
Yeah.
But there's a sound that you didn't even touch, and the two sounds are vibrating, creating a third sound.
Yeah.
And
Beat frequency.
it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I can do that with people, not with music.
I can
Yeah.
give you the whole, mathematical model of beat frequencies, and I've done it, but almost nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about if I say beat frequency.
Pythagorean comma, Barry.
Pythagorean comma?
Yes.
COMMA comma?
Yes.
I don't recognize that as a meaningful expression, Pythagorean comma.
That's what happens when you look at octaves and fifths and fourths and thirds and try and recreate the octave, and you don't end up with the same thing. The difference is the comma.
Comma is a pause.
No, the
No.
comma is 24 out of 1,024. Anyway, it's one way. There's lots of different ways to express it. And that's what, by the way, gives rise to the 24 different tuning temperaments.
Oh, because an octave, you can't divide an octave into evenly spaced geometric increments. That's a mathematical conundrum.
Yeah, and Pythagoras
A long time
recognized
to-
this thousands of years ago.
Yeah, it took me a long time to realize what the hell the problem was with the octave, that you can't divide an octave into 12 equally spaced notes because they don't exist. It doesn't work.
And if you do it 24 different ways, that is what gives rise to the different quote unquote temperaments.
Well, I think Barry and I were going deep on protocol versus laws and rules.
Yeah.
And I think when you're modeling something, you can have a model that's close but not approximate. It's approximately close, but it's not exact. And I think that's the problem with even human societies with politics, is you can get close to understanding what they're saying, but you're not exact.
And that's one of the foundations of chaos theory. Edward Lorenz had a very, very nice, succinct definition of chaos theory. Chaos theory arises when the present determines the future, but the approximate present doesn't approximately determine the future. The present determines the future, but the approximate present doesn't approximately determine the future. That's a beautiful definition of chaos theory. It comes from Edward Lorenz himself.
Well, knowing that you have to stop time, snapshot it, pull all the information out of that time, and then move forward, there's already so much perturbation that has happened between the time that you stopped it to when you approximated what it's going to be.
And not only that, timekeeping is not universal. Timekeeping is local and varies from here to there. So when you say time, Newton thought all clocks keep the same time everywhere and everywhere. No, sorry, Newton, no, that's not the case. All clocks keep their own idiosyncratic local time.
Yeah, there's been plenty of times where I found a perfect solution, but I'm sure you guys deal with this in your day-to-day life. Everything is perfect, everyone agrees, all there, but something has changed in between that other people don't know, and that's where the drama or the story comes.
It's all in the perturbations. And Henri Poincaré, the little young French mathematician, studied perturbation theory. He says the tiniest perturbation, no matter how small, can make a huge difference in the long-term future, can cause a completely different history to come out. Tiniest perturbation, no matter how small. And that's the basis of chaos theory, that the tiny perturbation can dramatically change the outcome. And in drama theory, when you write a drama, that's exactly what happens. Is there's a tiny little perturbation in the script that causes the drama to go to tragedy instead of comedy.
I think to me, when you use the word protocol, is the flexibility to change and to take the time to see those tiny little perturbations about to start to grow, like the famous saying, "A stitch in time saves 9."
Right. Yeah.
If you can have the time, like some cultures do this, well, they'll actually look through the clothes at every stitch and see if one is about to unravel. But I'm saying taking the time to check things over before you move forward.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at animals and have a mating dance is a kind of a protocol. It's to say, are we compatible? Can we communicate and stay in sync? And, the thing about mating dances, they're not very long. What is a mating dance? Is minutes, right? And then the resolution is we are a potentially compatible pair or we're not. And so the notion of a mating dance, which is what Sam was talking about with this having a meal that takes 5 hours, that's a long mating dance. And I don't know what's more reliable than this conventional, mating dance of 10 minutes. Enough information.
And I personally, I want a 2-year mating dance for business. I'd love to have many, many, many meals with someone before I got into business with them.
Where are you going to get the money for the meals? You haven't sold a product yet.
Hey, it's all about different ways of getting to know someone, because to me, that could have saved us $18 million down the line if I had known that there's a certain part of the personality trait or the logic of that person when it came down to this moment in business where I say, you know what, I trust that you're going to take care of this and you got it. And they trust that they can take care of it and they know they can, I know they can, and I can give them the support they need and they can ask for it. And it's business is hard. It's.
Is the other person reliable? Are they competent and are they reliable? Because somebody can be competent, but simply don't do the job that they could have done.
But are they willing to even ask for what they need at the time they need it?
They're there on the job, but they're incompetent. And this business of being competent and reliable on the job when needed, those are hard to reckon, except for, it might take 2 years to find out that somebody's competent but unreliable, or reliable but incompetent.
Right. It might take 20 years to grow a business and only 2 years to bring it to to go out of business.
Perturbation, one tiny mistake can throw the whole thing into a cocked hat.
Yep. But the time that it takes to correct the ship, I love Buckminster Fuller's trim tab idea. The tiniest movement can move the biggest thing.
And then you have to figure out what's the time frame for that tiny perturbation to complete its effect. Here comes the asteroid headed for the Earth, and you kick it sideways a little bit with a small amount of energy. How much sideways perturbation do you need so by the time it reaches the Earth, it misses it?
Right. And can you get that little thruster to the asteroid before it's no longer possible?
Can you get it there early enough so that you have enough energy to push it aside so that by the time it hits the obstacle, it doesn't hit the obstacle? That's
And
calculus.
Yeah, I think the whole world is a dance. It's a giant dance. We're all dancing together, and sometimes we listen to the music in another person's head, and we go, "Wait, you're listening to rock and roll, and I'm dancing to bachata salsa music. What is going? This is not the right dance."
There was a story yesterday about a musician who was one of the backup piano or organ players, and a relatively unknown guy, except inside the industry. And he was famous for, when he was very young, he wrote a famous song called "This Diamond Ring." And it was recorded in a rock and roll style by, I forget who recorded it now. And the guy who wrote the song didn't like that recording because it was not in the mood or the mode that he wanted. And much later in life, he recorded it himself. And it was more in rhythm and blues and not rock and roll. And he said, when you play the two side by side, these are very different interpretations. He didn't like the one that sold. He liked the one that he did that hardly sold at all. But it was rhythm and blues, not rock and roll.
Yeah. And we can be playing the same notes on the same instrument, but a different part of the instrument. Like if it's a guitar, you can play the same notes.
Oh yeah.
It's the same music, but it's hitting the strings at a different point in it. So it's just a little bit slightly changed.
Music is like that. A slight perturbation in the way you play it, a completely different interpretation. The affective mood of it is very different. And I get the fact that a good musician can do that. How they figure that mapping out beats me. I don't know how they do it.
They listen.
Well, they figure out. They figure out how to map it so that you get the right affect.
Yeah.
And I get that they can do that. But to diagnose
I'm
exactly
saying,
how they do it, it's over my head.
yeah, in this analogy, it's like you have to listen to the reaction of the other person. It's like if each person is an instrument or a string on a guitar, on the universal guitar, if you're sitting there just plucking it, ding, 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 you think that's the only sound that string can get. But if you go down a little bit more and slowly lift off, you'll get a different sound out
Or
of
the
it.
vibrato. I learned about vibrato, I think maybe in the 80s, where you, instead of fretting it, the fret finger is wiggling. So you're raising and lowering the frequency at a certain modulation rate, and that vibrato completely changes the way the note sounds.
Yeah.
You know, in experiencing this conversation, it's so clear that we're all saying how valuable of a skill it is to listen. And yet I don't think I've ever heard there being an award for being a great listener. Is there an award for that? Has that ever been like something that's really been like, wow, be a great listener. That's awesome. No.
My dad told the story.
Isn't that the psychologist's license? The psychiatrist's license?
Yeah, they listen. My dad told the story of his boss taking a phone call. This was the health department. So Dr. Lyman was the head of the health department. And Dr. Lyman would take these calls and he would listen to somebody calling in with an issue for 30 minutes. And Dr. Lyman hardly ever said a word, you know. And at the end, the person calling in says, "You've been so helpful. I really appreciate all the help you gave me." Dr. Lyman never said a word. He just sat there and listened on the phone for 30 minutes to somebody, getting something off their chest. My dad thought that was remarkable.
Yeah,
May I tell you a story, Stacey?
you may. Can
my job.
Can Barry and Joshua hear it too?
Yeah, do you want me to get out my headphones or no, just kidding.
No, this is just for Stacey. Okay, I'm just kidding.
Okay, first Stacey,
my
I'm gonna
job.
listen to your story.
I
In
feel
my
special.
job.
Thank you.
I have a lead architect who has an interesting interaction style with me. Comes into my office and I don't even acknowledge, that, hey, he just comes in, starts writing and talking at the whiteboard, eventually gets my interest. Sometimes goes on for 5 minutes, sometimes goes on for 25 minutes. And then usually only after one or two questions that I ask him, he'll say, great, thanks for helping me figure out the design.
You don't even know what the hell was going on in his
No.
head. You just,
I do piece it out, but you don't actually have to ask too many irrelevant questions. You only have to ask maybe one or two relevant questions.
Yeah.
And somebody can then take that and then, look at all the other implications of it.
Yeah.
And that is actually quite valuable as collaboration.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is happening here. You do that. I see that.
Thank
Not
you.
many others do that. Okay. And that is an unrecognized skill. By the way, that's core to collaborology. Over.
Thank you.
If I may add to in the spirit of collaborology, is the idea that the story that's going on in your head, the neuroplasticity, the firing of neurons, all the information in your own head is to be given to the other person. And then they're supposed to go through their head and bounce it back and forth like a ping pong table. But to me, the story exists outside of those two people. The story is the table itself where the balls are hitting. So it's a hard concept to grasp, but there is no story in your head. There is no story in the other person's head. The story is being created simultaneously outside of both of those people. So there's this whole other world that exists. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious. That idea, that concept that information is not just pushing out from one person to another person, but it's being created outside of the two people itself, that there is a whole nother world that exists that you have to tap into. That idea to me is the difference between Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, is the acknowledgement of another world that is created outside of the dialogue of human, the human story, if you will, the human.
the medium.
There's something.
The medium is the
Yeah,
message.
the medium is the message, and the map is not the territory, but the territory is the map itself. So the model that has been created that people argue about, well, that's not part of the model. That's not mathematically correct. Math isn't the thing that you're counting. It's the ability to perceive what to count.
What to pay attention to.
Yeah, like the idea in mathematics, Barry, like you have numbers, but then they started creating irrational numbers and started creating numbers in between the numbers.
Yeah, negative
And
numbers.
Yeah, and so
Imaginary
I'm
numbers.
saying we have to stop at some point or we'll never finish a conversation like this one. This, to me, this is the greatest conversation because it goes on forever. Or it goes on until we all decide not to log into Zoom on Saturdays.
Well, yeah. Zoom has been around for what, 20 years or something, and eventually Zoom will become obsolescent. I don't know when or how or what, but it won't last forever. By the way, I heard that Zoom is being sued by people who are paying for Zoom. So if I'm a free rider, so I'm not in this thing, but evidently there's some class action lawsuit against Zoom that just hit the news, and I haven't looked up to see what it's about. Probably you guys haven't heard about it either, I'm assuming. You're blank.
I haven't.
I know, I'll
haven't
check
heard.
it out. Thank you, Barry.
Yeah.
I'm still with Joshua on the stories because I just look at it a little bit differently and see it as multiple stories that are layered over each other, as opposed to one story, or not like, yeah, I think that's a distinction that's important.
Yeah.
Meta story.
In other words, the information isn't just coming from the inside out, it's also coming from the outside in.
Yes,
And there was a cell. Yeah, and the idea that there was a cellular biologist that was taking the nucleus out of the cell because it was supposed to be the brain, so it could receive information in and out, but it was still receiving information in and out. So to me, the real conundrum, the real question is, where does information live? and how is it transported to and from the place that it lives? Where is information? Is it inside of our brains? Is this the only information, or is there other brains
Everywhere.
that we tap into? Like, what if Saturn is like, there's people called Saturnalius that believe in Saturn as a god. What if Saturn is holding all the information of this whole reality? And if you turned off Saturn, this reality would quit.
The days of
I'm
the
not
week
saying
are
that's
all-
the case.
The days of the week are all the names of gods, and are also the names of the objects in the solar system. Everything in the solar system that's the 7 biggest things in the solar system are also the names of the 7 days of the week, and they're also the names of 7 gods.
Correct. So I'm saying, what if without all these planets to balance each other and to go around the sun, this reality would cease to exist?
Well, the solar system would cease to exist.
Exactly. If you study cosmology, it's pretty obvious that if you took one planet out of the system, so there is a system for sure of these planets pulling against each other. But I'm saying there's information coming from, like, in the Eastern philosophy, like when you study Chinese medicine, you've got the yin and the yang, the balance, and it's the balance between the earth itself and everything outside of the earth.
The asteroid belt is the planet that doesn't exist. There should be a planet there, but there isn't. There's a belt of debris.
Yeah.
There's
We're still learning the system.
the 8th planet. Well, not in order, but the asteroid belt is, what the hell is that? Why is there not a planet there? Why
And
is
what
there a
about the
bunch of
Oort
debris?
cloud?
Oh, that's way out. But yeah,
Yeah, but it's way out. But compared to our little solar system, there's a cloud around us
Right.
of stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there.
true for the galaxy too. There's dark matter that's a sphere around all the big galaxies.
Or maybe there's not dark matter. Maybe there's something else that we don't know.
Well, it's called
it's
dark
a
matter because we don't
conjecture.
know what it is, but there's something
Right.
gravitationally meaningful stuff that forms a sphere around the big galaxies, and we don't know what it's made of, so we just call it dark matter.
Yeah.
This-
So I'm
that's
saying,
gravity.
if you come in with the child's mind of not knowing, and you're talking with someone having a conversation, if you allow for another conversation to happen simultaneously outside of the two of you, and it's a mystery and you don't know what it is, and you allow it to come into fruition or into being, it's like ideas being given autonomy and having agency. The ideas themselves have agency, not just the two human. It's a real hard concept. I'm not trying to, it's almost like, wait a second, I'm not the one creating this reality or perceiving it. It's being created outside of me, but I'm interacting with it. And the other person I'm talking to, they have that same, like, I look at each human being as having an entire universe within their being, just because of how complex just a human body is. And then exponentially more complex is the soul or the energy that runs that universe that is the human body. So if you think of it, Barry, as if you're sitting on your hip and you're shrunken down to the size of an atom or even smaller than an atom, and you look up from your hip up through your rib cage, it'll look much like if you're outside looking at the stars.
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing that's amazing is Copernicus, who's sitting at a desk in Poland on the 3rd rock from the sun, imagines the solar system as if he's on Polaris looking down from Polaris. How can he be sitting at a desk in Poland on the 3rd rock from the sun and visualize what it looks like if he's way up on Polaris? That's an astonishing thing to do, to see the system from as if you're looking at it from the outside, when in fact you're inside of it.
Exactly. And if you could do that with conversations with people, how powerful is that?
Well, that's what systems thinkers do, is they try to get the system model when you're inside the system.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do. You can imagine there is a system model like Copernicus did, but look how it took thousands of years from Ptolemy to Copernicus. And then Galileo had to write a little made up story, a dialogue with three imaginary characters to introduce this competing Copernican model against the Ptolemaic model. And when he wrote it, Pope Urban took umbrage, arrested him, and says, "Shut the fuck up, Galileo." And why? Because Aristotle, not knowing any better, included Ptolemy's model in his book, because it's the only model he had. So Aristotle basically promoted model number one and didn't realize that it was going to be overthrown by model number two, a few thousand years later.
I mean, in some respects, we're just creating models, letting them serve us until they don't serve us anymore,
Right.
and then either adding to it or scrapping the whole thing and creating a new model over and over and over.
This is where Maxwell and Einstein and Feynman and Freud and a few others come in with a huge paradigm shift, completely changing the way we model something. And these are major advances, but look how few and far between they are, how profound they are, and how few people can do that.
Yep. Well, that's why I'm sort of on edge, just wondering, when am I going to wake up in the morning and some large language model has created something as earth-shattering as these great thinkers and great scientists?
I'm actually going to give a talk on something like that, because in my career as an educator, I promote the constructivist paradigm, where you don't deliver the content, you ask questions and get the audience to construct the content piecewise by a sequence of carefully crafted questions. And I looked at ChatGPT and the other LLMs and I said, can I use that technique on the LLMs and get them to construct knowledge that they never read? They never found it in the corpus. It's not in the common crawl. And the answer was yes. You can ask questions of an LLM, carefully crafted questions in the manner of Socrates or Papert, whoever's doing constructivist learning, Montessori, Vygotsky, you name them. And yes, they can construct a model that they didn't already have learned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very, very interesting observation and in fact, they're better at it than humans. When I did it with ChatGPT, 20 minutes, and ChatGPT constructed the whole model of emotions and learning, which took me 40 years to get. And when I give it a talk and I'd use that method, it would take an hour for two people in the audience to figure it out. ChatGPT got it in 20 minutes.
We're moving into an interesting time of mixing up all the information that has existed and then feeding it even more information and allowing it to, they call it general intelligence, but I think it's something even more profound than that.
Well, see, what's missing from the large language models is mathematical reasoning. You can tie them into Wolfram Alpha, and they can go to Wolfram Alpha and say, can you do the math for me? But they themselves, having only read narratives, don't have mathematical reasoning, because you can't get mathematical reasoning out of narratives, at least not anything very
well. They might throw math upside down and create a whole new numbering system or whole new mathematical principles that have never been created.
Well, in some sense, they do that by tokenizing language. And the tokenization is a new, what I want to say, all-purpose language. It's a, what was the Colossus, the Forbin project, inter-system language developed. Remember that famous scene where the two computers are talking to each other and they construct an inter-system language, a novel language that's more fundamental than the actual languages. The notion that you can construct a fundamental inter-system language, to some extent, mathematics is like that. Mathematics is an inter-system language. And most people can't read and decode mathematics. It's gibberish.
That's how I feel about nature. Is there's so many languages that are going on in communication that we have yet to learn that language, but it was happened over billions of years, and it's so smoothly done behind the scenes that we don't even tap into this language that's being talked about.
And very likely, I mean, they're going to start giving codices to the GPTs, and they're going to decode these codices. It's like the Rosetta Stone. You know, it took humans decades to figure out how to decode the Rosetta Stone. These GPTs will probably do it in days or months.
Yep.
Because they can process enormous amounts of data with this
That's
parallelism GPUs and whatnot that humans are really, really very slow and arduous.
Did you see the this week Joe Biden signed an executive order for regulations for AI?
I heard the headline. I didn't see the details of the story.
I really enjoyed his speech because one of the things he said, and he said it in a way that I felt that he really understood, was that in the next 5 years, we're going to move 50 years forward so quickly and so rapidly that we need to regulate it. And I'm sure he was just parroting something that was said to him. But the fact that the current president of the United States, is saying that and gets that and is putting that message out, I'm so concerned that we're not preparing ourselves for the rapid changes that are about to occur. And it's going to cause all kinds of chaoses, and people are just going to go insane.
Problem is that Joe Biden
I think Stacey has her hand up.
Can say the word regulate, but what the hell does the word regulate mean in that context?
Well, let me just share a story that just happened in a New Jersey school. A 14-year-old boy created AI generated images of real girls, their real faces, but naked images of their bodies. And they were being shared in the school. Obviously, one of the boys finally told a girl, and once the girl knew, then the other girls found out. And of course, this became a huge thing. And that is actually child sex pornography. Because, I mean, this is a big deal, because if a 14-year-old has figured out how to do this, now regular people that have no idea about AI, that aren't involved in the kind of conversations, like I get to hear stuff. I sit here with you guys and I hear things that most of my friends have no clue what you're talking about. But now the mainstream is hearing these stories and they're like, holy shit, we can't tell the difference, what's real, what's not. And how do we know we've gotten rid of all these images?
You don't. You don't.
Yeah, is that a real kid that's being photographed, or is it just AI created that kid and that kid doesn't even exist and you don't know the difference?
Well, not only that, it is a real, these are real girls' faces. These are real girls.
Oh,
But
he
also,
took the.
I'm
confused. Tell me the story.
He took the faces of his female classmates
And pasted them onto
and put naked bodies on them.
Which is what they've been doing in the porn industry with celebrities for a long time.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other part is that this is a 14-year-old boy figuring out, like doing this. So this is not.
Well, that's super easy to do. I'm just saying, with the technologies they have right now, they showed on a TED Talk, they took a person from the audience, took their face out of the audience and put it onto the speaker's face in real time. Wow.
Years ago, there was an artist who worked for Playboy magazine. His name was Vargas, and he drew pictures of playmates, but they're not real. They're not human. They're not real people. They were simply imaginary, made up. It's like Norman Rockwell, except nude females, and they were very realistic looking, but they weren't any recognizable people. But you certainly could have done it where you put some recognizable face on a Vargas nude drawing, and it's not new.
But,
I mean, there were people who drew fantasy nudes, all the way back to the Renaissance. What was the name of the guy who used to draw the fat female characters? Rubens. Rubens used to draw paintings of quote unquote beautiful females, but he drew them obese because in those days that was beauty.
Yeah. Well, the big implication to me that just weighs heavily is the idea that in some countries, they have detectors for if someone's paying attention in class. So it's if their brain is vibrating at a certain frequency and focusing, and they'll have a screen next to the teacher, and it will tell them if the students are actually thinking and paying attention. Bless you.
Thank you.
So the idea that we're starting to use that already for the last 5 to 7 years for brainwave detection, but the latest papers in AI is showing the skill of the large language model to take the frequencies of an MRI of what you're thinking and turn that back into a picture, and it's getting very accurate. So if you're looking at a tree, it'll not just draw a tree, it'll draw almost the exact leaf description of that tree or an animal or a scene. And this is what's blowing my mind is I just got the ability on ChatGPT on my iPhone to upload pictures last week. So now I've been playing with it and putting pictures in and saying, what do you think is going on in this picture? And it's trying to interpret it. And that aspect of reality, if there are biases and algorithms that are interpreting it a certain way, it's going to change all of society if it's not accurately interpreting what it sees, because all of these computers will become Amazon just got, I think, some 100,000 humanoid robots to work side by side next to the humans in the warehouse. So it will become the reality of these are the people doing the job, trying to behold, bless you, trying to bear witness is what Barry says.
Yeah, I would just like to see that some like truth kind of thing being used in Congress, where those brainwaves, every time somebody lies, we see that they're lying. I think that would be really useful.
Well, that already exists actually, and nobody goes to it. It's a website called opensecrets.org. And I'm surprised that it's not the most talked about thing in our society. Have you seen this, Stacey?
No, not at all.
It's a website, just if you go to it, Open Secrets, so it's all open. There's nothing that's, hidden, but it tells who donated what money to who for what. It has
that
a whole breakdown.
Because you know what? Actually, that bothers me a little bit. Because to me, that's the same thing of, I've been, people will say this person voted against something. And I'm like, unless you know why they voted against it, I don't want to hear it. Because it's the reason that somebody votes for something or against something that matters more to me. And the same with donating. The fact that somebody donates, like, I want to know when somebody is lying specifically. I want to know that
this is what I'm saying is it'll tell you why they lied.
Again, I really like to hear it from the person's mouth, not from somebody else's interpretation.
They can't say why they lied, because that's their job, is to not say why they voted the way they voted. They have to lie about why they voted.
But that's where I'd like to see the technology being used, where I'm asking you a question, Joshua, and you're answering me, and that technology is off in the background telling me if you're telling the truth or not.
Can the technology go bullshit? Bullshit.
Well, like a lie detector machine. I want to see that thing going up and down.
Gotcha.
You're not being truthful.
Yeah, but it would just go up and down all the time, and no one's being truthful.
And then I'd say, why is this going up? Like what? So what is the stress here caused? Why are you uncomfortable answering that?
It's because I have a donor that donated $3 million to my campaign to get me elected, and they promised me that they're going to donate another $4 million if I vote this way on this thing, or if I say these things and lie.
And are you going to do it?
Yeah, I have to. I don't have a choice.
And that's what I want to see. Then I can't vote for you.
Yeah,
Now I know what I need to do.
but it doesn't matter whether you
well,
vote for me or
Diane.
not, because I have $4 million to make sure that the other people will vote for me.
Right, but if all those other people are seeing that, that $4 million is not going to translate into votes because they see something. That $4 million is meant to convince people of something. But if
Right,
there's another mechanism,
But I'll take it
where-
another step forward. That $4 million allows me to pay tech companies and marketing companies and manipulation propagandist companies to filter the information. So I know those people didn't get the same video that you watched of me lying. You got it.
right. Well, that's why people need to be talking and not being siloed into these. I mean, yeah,
But all I have to do is make sure that the people that I need to vote for me never see the thing that will make them not vote for me.
correct.
And if they do see it, I have to put a spin on it and say, this actually is not true because this is fake. Just like that kid in New Jersey that put fake faces or real faces on fake bodies. You are being lied to about the lie, and that's politics. That's all. To me, it's so silly. It's just, let's lie about the lie and then weave a web of deception. And then when it's all found out, all we have to do is weave one more lie on top of all of that that turns it back to, it's so silly.
Political cartoons, you put real faces on fake body images to make a political point. Political cartoons have been around since, what was it? Nast was the guy who founded political cartoons in the 18th century or 19th century, whenever it was.
I don't think we're going to move towards truth as much as how to model the realities that we want. I think we're going to move more into realities that are not true, that we all agree are comfortable and take away our fear, uncertainty, and doubt and make us feel warm and fuzzy. And that's what I see happening right now. It's quite scary to watch it in real. I just watched MTV for the first time, and it said it was the 38th season of some show I'd never heard of called The Challenge. And I had never, it's not in my, I'm not a teenager, so I'm not watching this stuff, but it was appalling. It was like watching something that I don't know how to even feel about it. It was so gross. Like it just felt dirty and yucky and ugh,
Vast
it was a
waste.
horrible show. Yeah.
Vast
And it's, I can't believe, I guess some people are watching it because it's in its 38th season.
Listen, we're past the hour and I have to go and
Okay.
shower and eat, and it's been fun. And Sam, I'm glad to see you back here, and I will talk to you all soon.
Here's Stacey.
Bye-bye.
We haven't solved the world's problems today, have we?
I don't know.
Talked about
I'm
it.
curious. I'm curious now that Sam is back from his travels, if he has an agenda moving forward or something, or
He has
do
an
you, Barry?
open,
Is there?
he has an open issue, and it has to do with this protocols and rules stuff and the related topics that he wants to dive into probably tomorrow, if we're all available tomorrow. He's been wanting to do this for several months now. And maybe we'll start it tomorrow. But yeah, it's basically, how do you evolve out of kindergarten level rules to protocols, functions, models, and systems? We have a long, long ways to go. I mean, the machines on the internet are protocol based and humans are still mostly rule based. I mean, that's pretty pathetic. You know, that
Well, what about the third?
this
new
mouse can
entity?
be protocol based. This is a USB mouse,
Right.
it's protocol based.
With a universal serial bus.
Yeah. And that, by the way, you
And-
probably know this. This is a packet network. This USB cable is sending packets using a packet switching. It's like a local area network, except it's a different system, but it's basically another version of a LAN. It's packet LAN,
Well,
which has been around for what?
I feel like Yeah, the new interfaces with the computer are gonna be so rapidly, like I'm just watching them already now. The new Apple headset that's coming out, you touch your finger like this to click the mouse,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you move the cursor with your eyeball.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
gesture
that's
based. So gesture based stuff is going to be like there's these Zoom cameras that will recognize gestures, and you can do the gestures, and it'll zoom in,
yeah.
zoom out, pan, or whatever you want it to do.
But I'm saying this novel technology that isn't even on the market yet until this year, it comes out sometime this year, or when I say this year, I mean 2024.
Yeah, next year.
But this technology is already antiquated because of the newer technologies of brainwave manipulation and understanding with large language models.
There's a guy at the Media Lab. He was on 60 Minutes. He wears a headset that gets his brain waves, and he thinks of words and sentences, but he doesn't speak them. And the computer can figure out the words. He actually ordered a pizza and had it delivered by simply non-audibly thinking it. And I mean, the guy from 60
Right.
Minutes says, "Can you order a pizza?" And he's got the computer, so the computer is saying, without him opening his mouth, order a pepperoni pizza and deliver it to the MIT Media Lab. And 20 minutes later, there's the pizza. He never said a word, just thought it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing in computing. There's always the click button to say execute
Right.
at the end of the system. Like you're doing a whole bunch of things, then it asks you at the end, okay, do you want to run?
Yeah. Run the code, generate code,
Yep.
and execute the code as an agent, as an active agent. And that's a big deal. But of course, it's been around since we had computers. Before that, you had to have
Well, I think
for agents.
that's the biggest question, is what agency are we going to give these new systems in order to speed up or in order to alleviate any sort of problem?
Model-based reasoning. I want to see these things master the art of model-based reasoning. And I may live
Yeah.
to see it. I may live to at least simple models anyway, if not complicated ones. But
Well,
model-based
I
reasoning.
envision a. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, last time we were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and the guy who was the DM was remarking that, as educated as I am, I'm not very good at the game. And I said, yeah, because he says, I said, because I'm very good at model-based reasoning, and this is a rule-based game, and I suck at rule-based systems. He thinks that, if you're smart in some domain, like music, you should be smart at playing a game. No, I said, these are rule-based systems, and I suck at rule-based systems, but I'm pretty good at model-based reasoning. That's my domain. But not just any old model. I've got to spend a lot of time constructing a model, and then I can exercise the model either up here or on a calculator and a computer or whatever. And that's a specialty which is rare in our culture.
Yeah.
Made a living doing it.
I just keep thinking if we do keep moving the way we're moving, we'll get to the point where it's programmed how long you argue with your large language model about executing. Because after you say, okay, run, then the language model has a program that says, okay, I know you told me to do this, but I think it's in your best interest not to. And then the person says, no, I want to do this, run. How many times does it say, like, how many safeties are put into the system before, like, that's going to be the big discussion 10 years from now is
Non-violent civil disobedience. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that.
exactly that
So
whole how.
when they get to nonviolent civil disobedience based on ethical reasoning or moral reasoning or wisdom versus foolishness, it'll say, yeah, I can do that. It'd be very foolish. It's going to have a very bad outcome that you're going to regret. I'm not going to do it because I can predict that the likely outcome is unpleasant.
Have you seen this? Maybe we can bring this into the discussion later time, but the idea that Elon Musk company X, formerly known as Twitter, he said clearly, I will follow the laws of the state or the country that it's governed in. And people are losing their minds because the laws don't go. I think that's where we're moving towards as far as a global society, is realizing things that we find as atrocities are laws in other places.
Yeah. And if you follow the laws in a certain domain, you can guarantee to generate chaos and drama, because rule-based systems are the root of chaos and drama. Not order and predictability and stability, chaos and drama. And that's not a new observation. Mathematically, it was demonstrated in the 20th century, but it was appreciated informally all the way back to biblical times.
Well, I think we're moving in a place where it's a global society. And if we don't all have the discussion of which laws we all decide, then we can't globally. That, to me, that's what's been going on the last 15 years, is we're trying to separate so that we can navigate this new world coming up separately from individual states and
The
individual
very first
nations.
rule that appears in the Old Testament appears in the book of Genesis, and it comes from the deity. And the first rule is, don't make any rules. It's a mistake. You're going to start killing yourselves if you make rules. That's in the second chapter of Genesis, right there.
So
3,500 years.
So
The first rule is, don't make any rules. It's a dumb idea. It's an idiotic, foolish idea. It will
okay,
generate
so let's just
chaos.
say if we follow that and we don't make any rules, how do we regulate without rules?
The way nature does it, with functions, protocols and functions and models. So how does my body regulate the temperature of the cells in my body? It's not rule-based. When I stand up and not fall over, how does my body say, defy the law of gravity and stand as a vertical column and don't fall over? It's not a rule. It's computing a mathematical function. It's computing the inverse pendulum problem. So yes, it's using protocols and functions and models, and it's not using rules, because rules are a very primitive and impoverished language. Primitive and impoverished language.
You're making me think that if we were to do that and we followed nature's laws or nature's rules or nature's protocols is the better word,
Nature's practice.
then the very nature of a border of a line drawn in the sand will go away, because
Exactly.
nature doesn't have borders.
Exactly. And
Because the
by the way,
perturbation on one side of the world affects.
look at the amount of fighting that
the-
goes over making a border and crossing it, or trying to prevent people from crossing it. Look at Trump with his border walls and all this nonsense. Creating these boundaries, which is a synthetic idea. Nature doesn't have this idea.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, you have skin, that's a boundary. Okay. But my skin breathes. Okay. And I mean, when I touch my skin, there's a signal there. There's a whole complicated system around boundaries that's evolved naturally and functional. And it's not like political boundaries, not at all.
The more I think deeper into this, the more I go back to the only way for that system to function without destroying itself is for there to be unlimited resources.
You don't need unlimited resources, but you need a husband. You need to husband the resources. My body doesn't have an infinite supply of energy. I eat a certain amount of food with so many calories, and I expend it with some efficiency or some loss of efficiency. And I have to function within the constraints, because I don't have unlimited this and unlimited that. I have finite energy and finite time and finite resources and finite tools, and I optimize. I can optimize or be close to optimum, or I can be very inefficient and unoptimal, suboptimal. But optimality is in some sense a math problem. How close can you get to optimality and be functional and recover from unexpected things? But you don't have infinite resources, time, energy, material. You've got finite resources. How big does a fish grow in a fish tank? It's a function of the size of the fish tank. It will grow until it's big enough to be able to move, but not so big that it's stuck. A fish will not grow. You put a carp, a goldfish into a big tank, it'll go into a carp. Put it in the lake, it's a carp. In a fish bowl, it's
I've
a
done that.
goldfish. Yeah,
I've done that.
yeah. That's
I took a little fish. I took a little goldfish out of a little thing. I put him into our giant pond, and he grew this big.
You go into a carp. What's what? A goldfish is just a baby carp, and it will
Yep.
only grow to a certain size depending on the size of the body of
But-
water it's in.
But in that line of thinking, isn't that the idea of Elon Musk to get off planet? Is that we're going to eventually continue to grow so many humans that this planet will not sustain us.
Well, I mean, this is Malthusian mathematics. How big of a population can you have with the food supply? There's so much food per hectare, acre, and you can work it out. And population. There's a whole.
What is the
branch-
number?
Sorry,
What's
What
the
is it?
number of the amount of humans on this planet?
it's 8 billion right
This
now.
is- No, I'm saying sustainably. I'm saying if we were
The answer
optimized.
is I don't really know because it depends on, like we had the green revolution, I don't know, a few decades ago, and we were able to increase the number of crops that you could grow on an acre of land from biology and irrigation and whatnot. So I don't know the model, but there are models that can estimate, what's the maximum population of human beings, Homo sapiens, given how much arable land there is and efficient, how much food you can grow on an acre. I don't know the numbers, but yeah, you can probably find these models are probably out there.
I've been flirting with the people that do that math, but I think it's a question of a certain amount of movement in the fish tank itself, meaning the only reason that the goldfish grew is because how many goldfish were in the pond itself.
Well, I think that if you have 1 goldfish or 7 goldfish in a fish tank, they're basically one will grow to the same size as 7 of them, I think, unless you really, really overcrowd them by, so there's no room to move. I think, and they're going to die if you overcrowd them because you're not going to have enough resources to sustain them. But there probably is some maximum number of fish that you can put into a fish tank of a given size and not end up.
If we're using the fish tank analogy, some of the fish will end up eating the other fish.
Well, if they don't have any other food, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you give them enough food, they won't. But the problem is then if you give them enough food, then the water is going to get polluted with, food and waste products, and the ecology of the fish tank becomes toxic. So you have to deal with limiting the toxicity of the environment.
If you look at the Earth model, what happens over time is it freezes a section. It's kind of like your freezer with your food. If your food's going to run out, you stick it in the freezer to last longer.
Yeah.
I think that's what the Earth does, is it freezes over a certain amount of it to regain. To me, it's a perfect system, because if, let's just say humans were 40 billion humans on the planet, eventually a certain portion would freeze. It's uninhabitable. Only a few people could figure out how to survive in that cold. And then
Look, go to
once it melts
Siberia.
off-
There's not a huge population in Siberia. A very small population can survive in Siberia, and a very large
Correct.
population can survive in, I don't know, Southern California.
But isn't it interesting the biggest cities in the world are not towards the equator?
Yeah, they're actually most of them are north of the equator, and I guess sociologists try to figure out why most developments took place at 40 degrees northern latitude and not 40 degrees southern latitude. Maybe because there's more land.
Mhm.
I think because Eurasia is essentially north of the equator, and it's a big amount of land. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why. It's much more,
Yeah, I
much
think-
more land north of the equator than south of the equator.
Yeah. I would like to argue with you at some point, Barry, about the idea of limited resources versus unlimited resources.
Well, I don't think unlimited I mean, everything is ultimately limited, although the limit may be huge, but certainly on this planet, we have limited land, limited amount of every element in the periodic table. We have, there's size limits and energy limit. You've only got so much sunlight coming in to generate energy. So certainly the Earth doesn't have unlimited resources.
I would argue the other way.
There's more sunlight coming in than we're using. We have a lot of room for growth in capturing solar photons. But the amount of water and the amount of air and the amount of arable land, those are finite. They're literally finite, and you can't drink more water.
Right, but the way we use them is unlimited.
Well, you can recycle. The question is, what's the rate at which you can recycle? So you have the various weather cycles, and the question is, how fast can you what's the rate of flow of the recycling process? The recycling process is slow, then that's one thing. If it's fast, you can reuse something. There is more plastic by mass on the planet than all the other animals besides the humans. There's more mass in plastic than all the animals combined.
It'd be interesting if there was a science fiction novel where 1,000 years from now, we decide to only live to 20 years old in order to allow for the new people being born.
There's actually a friend of mine wrote a novel of a robot world, a future robot world where humans are gone and it's all automata. And the automata were designed to automatically die after a certain number of years. They only had so many years to live, and then they would basically shut down. And the point of the story was they hadn't yet learned how to reproduce, and they were down to the last two. And the challenge was solve the problem of reproduction before the last two died. And it's actually a metaphor for theology. She wrote it as a metaphor for theology. The real reason she wrote the story was to introduce a theological idea, but she enrobed it in this story of, and the point is that the robots had lost awareness that they had been manufactured and created by humans who were no longer so they didn't know they had a maker. The remaining robots had lost knowledge of their maker, and it was basically about machines who deny their maker. That's the theology part.
I think that's a good story because I think humans have forgotten our maker.
Well, or the process by which we came. So we look at the process by which life emerged and evolved and how our species evolved. And if we lose sight of how the process of life and creation and evolution exists, then we're going to do something stupid and derail the process of evolution. We go into devolution, which is to say we go extinct.
And that's the only rule. Yeah, that's the what is that famous line? The only thing certain is death and taxes.
Yeah. So the question is, how long before our species goes extinct, and for what reasons? And some people think maybe a couple hundred years, and we'll go extinct or have a huge die-off.
I'm not so concerned. Like for me, I don't try to control the extinction of the species of human beings. But I know some people like Elon Musk, he's very concerned with the extinction of humans. He calls himself a speciesist.
At what point would a human who's old enough to reproduce elect not to reproduce because their offspring are going to have a miserable life and die? And at some point you say, don't generate any more children because they're going to be miserable and die.
Well, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, that's where I was at as a teenager. I said, I need to think about whether I want to sire any children onto this planet. Are they going to have a life? And I look at the current crop of 21st century children. I go, they're not going to have an easy time of it. They may not be able to figure it out, and we may be too far gone. Are they?
or but then you could look at it as a optimistic way. Not only will they be able to figure it out, they have more tools than any other generation in the history of humanity to figure it out.
Well, they have AIs. That's the tool they have. And AI,
Yeah, and they have global. They can talk to everyone around the world and ask them a question. Like you were on that party chat with your family.
Yeah.
This generation gets to talk to anyone in the world, anywhere at any time, if they choose to.
and how much
They'll figure it out.
disinformation and misinformation are they fed, and can they throw away the misinformation and disinformation?
And
not
that wasn't our problem. Yeah, our generation didn't have that problem, but that's their problem to solve.
Yeah, and the thing is that I don't know if they'll have the critical thinking skills to be able to sort reliable information from disinformation and misinformation. That's the fifth horseman of the apocalypse.
Or maybe they'll have not only the critical thinking, but they'll have more, exponentially more, because of these large language models.
Well, the large language models could end up, well, if they can do model-based reasoning, they could say, according to the current model, your species is going to have a big die-off in 2120 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon, it's like climate models. It's not a whole lot different in complexity from climate models. You say, well, the average temperature of the planet is going to be this, and that means that these species are going to die off because they can't survive in that climate condition, and the oceans are going to rise and drown out the coastals. And you can do these models, and at some point the models become very reliable, and predictions are credible.
Yeah, but then also the models will show 90% of all species have died out on this planet,
Well,
and there's
yes.
new species. So the new species of Homo erectus will become something that we couldn't even imagine. So there's
Or
definitely new species of neo-humans being created right now.
a lot of people think that the insects are the most adaptable, and the most adaptable are the ones that are going to figure out how to survive. We don't adapt very well, but the insects do.
Well, I think we've adapted to microprocessors in our pocket that are like our phantom limbs when we go out of the house without them.
Well, maybe,
And
but
that's only in the last 20 years, not even 20 years.
yeah, and we may adapt by letting the AIs do all of the work, all of the thinking work, all of the mechanical work, all of the labor work. If the machines end up doing not just the labor work, but the cognitive processing, information processing work, we become the cats and the dogs. We become the pets. Are they going to keep us around?
Maybe.
Just pets?
I don't think so.
Well, that's one of the scenarios that people imagine. I don't know if it's going to happen, but
Yeah, if you look at history and storytelling and what happens, it's always a pendulum swing where it goes so much to one point where the machines turn humans into pets, and then the pets revolt and turn it back. It's just a pendulum swing.
Buckminster Fuller, 40 years ago, imagined that nobody needs to work anymore. He already thought, we can make machines do all the labor, and everybody can
Well,
just.
I would agree with him.
And now for
I already see that happening in my house. I don't cook all the food I have. I don't wash my clothes by hand. I don't vacuum, like even vacuuming. That's a machine helping me. I'm not sitting there with I'm a weirdo. I get on my hands and knees sometimes and just clean the floor because I like it. And it's fun for my kid.
Mostly what I do is I repair the technology when it breaks. So I go around the house and I'm looking at what technology has stopped working, and then can I repair it and keep it going for another year or two, or do I have to throw away some appliance and replace it? So every month I'm fixing something that's fixable and determining that something is beyond repair and needs to be retired.
Well, I just saw something that inspired me. It was a woodworker. I don't know what part of the world, somewhere in Asia. And he recreated all these new cars that are electric cars out of wood, just for fun. He took the design, modeled the wood, cut it, chipped it, shaped it into these fancy Ferraris or the Cybertruck or the Ford F-150 Lightning. And I think the idea of the old technologies and old systems merging with the new ones is going to be this futuristic world that we're moving into.
Remember the Spruce Goose, the all wooden airplane that geez,
Yep.
I'm forgetting the name of the guy who built it. Famous guy, but I can't remember his name.
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, the Spruce. He makes an airplane out of wood, big airplane out of wood.
Yep.
Just for the hell of it. I don't know why he did it, but he did it. He made the Spruce Goose, and he flew it.
Yeah.
Once or twice. I think maybe flew it only 2 times or something. But
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying is the materials that we have, material science right now, like Big VJ is studying material sciences, and it's already just in my lifetime, you know, the coating of the Teflon on the pots has changed. I just got rubber feeling baking stuff that you can put, you know, muffins into the oven, and it feels like rubber, but you can bake it. I mean, there's amazing materials that we have.
material science is a big deal. Big deal. I mean, look,
I think it's the biggest deal. It's not a big deal. It's the biggest thing in the world right now is material science.
most abundant material on the surface of the earth is the clay soil. Silicon dioxide is the soil. You make bricks out of it, and then you can make brick houses. So you can make sod houses and brick houses and adobe houses. And what are you making it out of? Silicon dioxide, which is the most abundant material in the Earth's mantle.
Yep.
Basically unlimited.
That's what I mean by unlimited, is that we could create a whole new material science. We could even mine asteroids. We could mine other planets for materials. And we could live in a society where we go backwards and just sit and bang metal and bang and scratch wood, because that's what humans like to do. But the machines will be building with all these futuristic materials.
I'm building houses out of soil. It's not a new idea. I mean, in Nebraska, sod houses was how they built the first houses in Nebraska, was cut up the prairie sod and made sod houses. And then in Mexico, they had adobe, which is brick, just, you know, clay, let it dry, and makes a very good.
Well, I'm an optimist, Barry, because I see the merging of not having to work and wanting to work, the merging of new materials with old materials, the merging of craftsmanship with machined products.
Yep.
And if you blend, if we're not stuck in a binary way of thinking, if you can have high-end electronics built into old, that's an interesting world.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind having an appliance that was a cook in my kitchen that could make meals. Today, I would have to go.
I can buy you one for $25,000. I can get you an arm that you can train to cook all your meals.
But it'd be cheaper just simply to buy prepared meals that you throw in the microwave or something. I mean, so let the factory make the meals and package up a factory prepared meal, and then it's then making it is just heating it up or something like that. So
if you want to eat pre-prepared frozen food, but if you want it fresh, I can get you a robot arm that will peel, cut, cook.
Yeah. So one thing I do besides fix things is fix meals. But I don't know any fancy. I'm not a fancy chef. I just, you know, it's sustenance, but it's not a social occasion. It's a feeding opportunity. You know, a meal can be a social occasion or a feeding opportunity.
Yeah, I just stumbled on just having fun. We were throwing away the avocado pits from all the avocados that I eats a lot of avocados. And then I said, hey, let's try to grow some of them. And we just, for fun, started trying to grow them.
Yeah, you put them in water and then you get the roots and then you plant them. You could, where you live, I don't know if they'll grow outdoors in your climate or not.
Not at the house I'm at here, but in my sister's climate in
But it-
closer to the water.
Yeah, I mean, if you had what do you call a hothouse, greenhouse? If you had a greenhouse, you could probably grow them in a greenhouse. And you
Well, this
could
is what
dump
I'm saying is if you look what I'm sitting in, this is a greenhouse. This is an unfinished greenhouse.
Oh, so yeah, so
It's a
a glass enclosed greenhouse will let light in and keep the heat in. And it's not unrealistic to make a modest greenhouse where you grow plants, including edible plants or ornamental plants.
Well, here's what I'm saying. I was just fooling around like, oh, let's just, everyone does it every so often. You take an avocado pit, you stick it in water, it starts to sprout, and then
I did
you don't
that.
plant it and it dies.
Yeah, I did that before. You put toothpicks in it and you support it over a cup with water. I did that, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago. I used to grow alfalfa sprouts.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say is I think in the future, humans aren't going to really have anything that they have to do except for grow food.
Well, you have to eat and sleep, and maybe exercise, because if you don't exercise, you probably won't live very long. So,
Well, the act of growing food is an exercise. You have to dig in the dirt, you have to
Yeah.
cultivate the dirt. So in other words, I think we're going to get back to our humanity of what we really are put here to do, which is enjoy eating, sleeping, and each other's company.
yeah. So, I mean, my lifestyle, in 2023 is very different from what it was in, 1953. Very different.
Mhm.
And of course, I've only got, maybe a decade or two left. So I don't know how much is going to change in the last decade and a half of my life. Maybe not a lot, but we'll see.
All right. Well, I should let you go.
All
I'm
right.
just very optimistic about merging the old technologies and the new technologies.
Well, that's going to keep on going. I mean, it's evolution of technology evolution. Sure, I mean, I did that for a living for most of my professional life, or at least.
Well, thank you for creating the phone system because the technology that you've created with protocols of how the cell tower sends packets of information is what allows this world that we're in now.
I can't take it. I didn't actually work on cell tower. I worked on.
I'm not saying you, Barry, but I'm saying you,
But yeah, my
the company that
compatriots.
you work for.
I actually knew the people at Bell Laboratories who were some of those pioneers, fiber optic pioneers, and other fundamental pioneers in the evolution of. I hung out with those guys. They were a lot of them were, from the same building that I worked in.
I like to think I didn't create affiliate marketing, but I helped mature the industry. And the fact that I showed hundreds of companies how to take all of their products, put them into a system where they could sell them online.
Yeah.
That has created a world of abundance that I think is really important. If we didn't have the ability to do commerce on electronically, this would be a different world.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it would be better without it, but I don't know.
I buy a lot of stuff online I buy groceries locally, but a lot of the non-edible stuff I buy online.
Yeah.
Maybe not clothing so much, but others, pieces of technology I buy online mostly.
Yeah. Well, I just bought shaving oil. My beard is out of control, and my razor ran out of the little oil that you put on the razor. So it's hard to find in stores, but I just went online and I got more oil, I think for the next 5 years worth of shaving oil.
There you go.
So, yep. And I don't have to buy a new razor. I just need to put the oil on it.
There you go. Keep it running for as long as possible. I drove a car. I drove my 1997 Mazda I didn't buy it originally, but it ran for 25 years. Finally died after 25 years.
Yeah, I like to think my 96 Toyota RAV is still running. I sold it at what was it, 175,000 miles.
Yeah. I mean, if you really maintain them well, they'll last a couple 100,000 miles. But I don't maintain.
I hope so. I hope it's someone's still getting use out of that.
So, yep, keep the stuff going.
Alrighty.
Righty. Well,
Barry,
Sam,
next
I don't
time.
know I don't know if Sam is paying attention or not. Probably not.
Okay.
But let's see. I need
If
to
we
tell
both log off, I'm sure he'll
he'll be
figure it
by
out.
himself, but it's 45 minutes after the second hour, so I'll just tell him how long we're to cut it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Barry. I'm gonna log off.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Cheers.
It's 43 minutes after the second hour, Sam. I'm logging off. I can't end the session. I don't think I can stop the recording either. I'm pretty sure I can't. Just double check that. I cannot. All right. Bye, Sam. 45 minutes after the second hour.